Welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. If you enjoy our content, please like or subscribe.
Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have a pergola or maybe a kitchen or something that you want to get done in the house? Check out K&H Construction. Chris Helms out of Waxahachie, local guy. Let him know DV LeBron sent you. Today, my very special guest is Miss Antoinette Berafatto, an Army veteran, wellness coach, and outdoors influencer. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here with you today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You know, I read through your story and saw some of the things that you're doing on your podcast, the New Normal Big Life podcast. You guys check it out. And I love the stories of my brothers and sisters in arms and what they're doing in life after, and you know, their adversity. So I wanted to have you on for that and to talk about some other things we're gonna cover today. But can you give a bio on you?
Sure. So I joined the Army. I am from a legacy of veterans. My mother's four brothers and my dad and his twin brother all served in the military. They did not wait until they were drafted. My dad was in the Navy with his twin brother during World War II and then served in Korea in the Army, where I later served in the Real MASH unit, 65th Medical. And after the military, I became a tech CEO, realized that they did not value integrity in the business world. I kept getting told that I had career limiting honesty. So I thought, well, I'll go do something else. And I became a writer and an outdoors enthusiast by way of physical rehabilitation using outdoor therapy, because during the Army, I worked as a air assault expert field medic. And so I would rappel out of things, out of helicopters, down buildings, off mountains, and go give first aid to people. And in one instance in Korea, I was rappelling down a mountain. I got injured by the same conditions that injured the person I was going to help. And I suffered a traumatic brain injury and spinal cord injury. And after 11 years in the Army, when I could no longer do my job, I left the military and went into tech, and then full circle back into healthcare. And that's where I am today.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot to go through and recover. When you were in the middle of that, because I call PTSD the tunnel. That's how I call because we all kind of dealt with it in different ways, and I had a tunnel I had to get through. But you had this thing that is PTSD and how it affects us, and then trying to heal these health issues that are very significant. Your spine is very important. What got you through it? What was your way of working your way through?
Oh, that's such a great question. Really, I started having difficulty with word recall, balance, my ability to walk. I couldn't remember things that I had done for many, many decades, like driving a car, the rules of the road, using a can opener. And I couldn't remember the words for the task I was trying to do. So I couldn't even ask Google or a friend to help me. And it seemed like I had a lot of health challenges all converge at the same time. And it was so complex that doctors really struggled to figure out what was wrong with me, how I could somewhat recover from my traumatic brain injury, PTSD, spinal cord injury, breaking my back, only to crash. And now I'm using a walker, a service dog, and a full-time caregiver. And so while the doctors were doing surgery after surgery, I was waiting for my fifth surgery, and I was barely surviving. I thought one day when I woke up, I was looking down on my body. My service dog was there with me. She wouldn't leave my side, not for food, not for water, not to go outside. And it was like she was looking at me saying, I'm not going to let you pass alone. And I had a sense of peace. I wasn't afraid. I didn't tell my caregiver to rush me to the emergency room. Although my caregiver noticed I was in decline, they were thinking a good thought, usually, which is if your airway, breathing, and circulation is fine, you really don't want to go to the emergency room in the middle of the night or on a holiday or a weekend because you don't get as best attention during that time because they're not staffed as well. So the plan was to wait until the next day, but in my heart, I felt like I wasn't going to make it till the next day. So I thank God for the life I had lived because comparatively, I had a good life and I was prepared to move on to my next existence. I was feeling like I'm going to heaven because I had lived a good Christian life. So I didn't stress or worry. I just kind of resolved that this was it. But I did say, God, if you give me one more day, I'm going to figure out why I'm so sick. And when I do, I'm going to turn around and help other people. And that's what led me to creating this podcast because I did figure out the answers. I did start helping other veterans, family members, friends, their children recover from all kinds of health challenges. And then I said, okay, now it's time to help a wider audience.
There was something that I heard you talking, and that is beautiful, the journey that you went through. I mean, it's I've had 4 back surgeries, and they take a toll on
Wow.
you. They do take a toll on you, especially when I was in the middle of the tunnel, so it does take such a toll on your body to have that many times they cut into you. And I heard you refer to it in one of your podcasts where you called it the gaslighting medicine, where they were trying to tell you what was wrong with you and they weren't believing you.
Yes. So what I find with doctors and your 7 to 15-minute appointment is they have already decided what your diagnosis is going to be, and they sort of kind of listen to what you have to say, but they're not really connecting all the dots because they spent about 5 minutes looking at your electronic record. Sometimes all the information is not there. They make assumptions about you and your lifestyle, and they have a plan that they want to march forward with without really hearing all of your symptoms and how things are coming together. And so, what I do with my doctors is I pump the brakes. I don't let them say to me, this is your, after 5 minutes of conversation, this is your diagnosis. These are the pills we're going to put you on. We're going to send you to this therapy, some kind of physical therapy or talk therapy or whatever it may be. And if that doesn't work, we're going to cut out that organ because it's just bad.
Yeah.
And at some point, you have to say, listen clearly to what I have to say, because we're partners here. You're not dictating to me what is going to happen to my body. I'm the owner of this machine. And I want you to clearly hear what my problems are. And then let's together work on a treatment plan.
Right.
Not you tell me how things are going to be because it's my body. And they often don't have enough information to really turn over the keys to your body. So what I have done with experts that I've had on my podcast, like Dr. Julie Seamers, who explains what to do when you're being gaslit by your doctor, or what to do when your doctors are not listening to you or not being a partner in your healthcare, because that's really important that your doctor is a partner in your healthcare.
Yeah. I mean, that I have seen that in life. I have seen that in, family members. They when it gets too complex, they want to pass you off, or they want to blame maybe you had depression and that has to be it. They will go right into the mental thing right away when it doesn't quite fit what they think it's supposed to be. And that happens to so many people where they'll push it off as it must be mental. And so many people don't get the right treatment because it must be mental. Well, even when the patient is saying, "Hey, listen, this is what happening to me."
Right. And what I am learning from all of the experts that I've had on my podcast, and I have a medical background. I'm trained in anatomy, physiology, pharmacology, infection control, disease prevention, and general dentistry and radiology. So I have a wide breadth of knowledge. Plus, I interview experts in every form of medicine you can imagine, from MDs to herbalists and naturopaths, functional medicine doctors, and here's what they're saying. Even your mental illness at the root cause can be a gut problem, not a mental health problem. It could also be an inflammation problem. Lots of other chronic diseases like diabetes, if you're overweight, if you have lymphedema, your lymphatic system is not removing the lymph fluids from your body, Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive decline in general, so many things that we think is just normal aging is not just normal aging. Parasites, inflammation, and gut health are three keys that you really need to solve to get at the root cause of many of our health challenges. And here's what I know for a fact, 100%. If you go through my social media, if you go to my website, you'll see photos of me aging in reverse. Yes, I said aging in reverse. You can see it in my face. You could see my dark hair was turning gray. It's turning dark brown again. And you can see my face change. My photos from 7 years ago make me look older than I look today. And if I am aging in reverse on the outside, just imagine how I'm aging in reverse on the inside. And at my last physical, and a lady usually doesn't tell her age, but I love telling my age. I'm 58 years old
No,
on my way to
no, I'm
being
not believing that. I'm
59.
not believing that. No, nope, 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 nope. Ma'am, I heard
Yep.
the thing about don't crack, but ma'am, you cannot be 58, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And the thing about it is, though, that I'm doing it naturally.
Hmm.
And everything that I learn, what I learn from the doctors on and healers on my podcast, I apply in my life, or I was already applying it in my life. And then I brought on an expert to further explain how it works. So I am my own human guinea pig for my podcast guests. I don't have someone on my show. If they're talking about something that I would not try or recommend if I had that problem, I don't bring them on the show. Because if I wouldn't recommend this to my family, I'm not going to recommend it to all the people who listen to my voice on a weekly basis.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. I, you know, b- and there's something about your past that I want to get into, but what do you think is that barrier that, and I've heard about this gut health thing and there's different types of things that people are looking at now because you get all your nutrients by what you consume, what you put in your body. And these are the things that can make your body function right and etc. And they're the most disregarded thing in medicine. What do you think is that push about? What do you think about?
The push to explore gut health
No,
or
no,
the cause
the
of it.
push from the regular medical, you know, the regular medicine against things like, looking at your gut health, looking at these different
Oh,
parasites.
so I ask my guests this all the time, and here's the answer I get again and again. Doctors are backed into a corner by big pharma and the insurance company. And here's what I mean by that. The insurance company will only allow doctors to see you for about 7 to 15. And in that amount of time, they have to figure out what's wrong with you and come up with a treatment plan. But that treatment plan also has to fit into what the insurance company will pay for. And what the insurance company will pay for is what the drug manufacturer said they can relieve by taking this medication or this therapy or this form of surgery. And so it's really kind of driven by money,
Yeah.
really is a simple answer. And that's why you're seeing so many doctors who are starting concierge practices, meaning they're not taking insurance. You pay a certain fee every year or every month, and you get to see that doctor for however long your visit takes. And you get much better care because they're not backed into that corner by what they can test and what they can recommend as a treatment, a course of treatment.
Yeah, it makes sense. It really does that, there's big money behind all of that. And there's big money in keeping you sick. I mean,
Absolutely.
keeping you sick is anything from the way they're making our food to, there's just so many ways that it's keeping you sick, and that kind of makes being sick is a lot of money for people, and they under
And DB, you touched on something really important earlier when you said, it flew right out of my head.
it's
Hold-
okay. I understand.
I don't remember. I'm having a brain injury moment, but
It happens.
maybe I'll think of it
And you know
later.
what? It happens. Sometimes I forget why I even come in the room. So yeah, and I know I came in here for something, but I do remember this. When you were talking about your service, you, you said you were a combat medic, and I've met a lot. My doc, I would call them doc. In the Navy, we called them doc. They were hospital
Right.
corpsmen, and they meant the world to us, especially in theater. So thank you for doing that job. I do appreciate it, and
Oh,
being a
thank
combat
you.
combat medic with a family history of serving. So tell me more about how you incorporated that into your life now, and how you're helping others with that training.
Well, I got to see a lot of things during my time as a medic. And one of the things that I experienced was supporting FEMA in disaster relief. And that really impacted my life in two ways. First, it reminded me that I needed to be physically, mentally, spiritually strong enough to handle whatever comes my way. And that life, you really never know what you're going to be faced with during your lifetime. The second thing is when there's an emergency, there are so many people who need help from FEMA, from local nonprofits, and your local government. You don't want to be one of those people needing help from your government because there's a crush of people all needing the same help. So you're in a queue, you're waiting, and that queue is not fun. That queue is not always safe. That queue is not always effective. So for me and my family, we are relying on our own self-reliance so we don't have to jump into that queue of waiting for FEMA or your county or your state or a local nonprofit to come and help you out if you have an emergency. And just this year, we survived a 3-day blizzard where we were trapped on our rural property. I live in a cabin in the woods. That's my actual living room. And we were trapped on our property by snow on one side and behind us, the rising river. And so if the river crested and flooded us out, we didn't have a way to get out because the snow was so high until we dug ourselves out. But we also did not wait for the county or the city, or I don't live in a city. I live in a census zone. It's not even a town.
Yeah,
But we didn't have to wait for someone to come rescue us. We saved ourselves.
yeah.
And then just last week, we had record level flooding. Thankfully, it did not reach our cabin, but it flooded the rest of our forest. And again, we had all of our disaster preparedness ready. We were not panicked. My nervous system was not on overload because we had prepared in advance.
This is interesting because I live in Texas, and it's going into tornado season. And anytime there's something like that, when we've had tornado warnings, my wife she has a laundry basket with things that we're gonna need, helmets, etc. And she busts that thing out, puts it in the closet we're gonna be on, and then we all go. So she's already has something prepared. Is that kind of like what you're talking about, or are you talking something more extensive? Because you're like those people in North Carolina when they got flooded out from that hurricane a few years back, they did there was no road to get to one of those towns, one of those famous towns that everybody went to. There was no road to get there. So are you talking more long
That's
term, or are
right.
you talking short term preparedness?
I'm talking both short-term and long-term preparedness, and I'll just use a few examples from my own life. So one day, I was living in Colorado at the time. I live in the Midwest United States now, but I was living in Colorado at the time. It was a beautiful, uh, I think, August day, and I was hiking in the foothills of Colorado, Rocky Mountains with my dog. We left out and it was 78 degrees. I was in a tank top and shorts, and suddenly there was this massive cold front. We were both extremely cold, but I'm a hardy gal. I was like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to finish my hike, even if it is cold. Instead of walking, I'll just run. That'll warm me up. Well, I started running, and then my dog planted her feet and turned around the other way and started running. And I had no choice because she was pulling me out of the foothills to follow her. And thank God I did, because a few seconds later, the snow dumped on us so intensely that we couldn't even see the steps. So, we were on a path and I just stayed on the path. And because she's also a trained service dog, she got me back to the car. And it was such a strong blizzard, I couldn't see anything. But in my car and on my body, I had a backpack. And on my body, in that backpack, was a tent. And it's small. They're all about the size of maybe 2 inches. It's a foldable Mylar tent, sleeping bag, and blanket. I had food and water for myself and for my dog, and I take it on every single hike.
Wow.
So if I had got stranded by the snow, I would not have frozen to death out there. I would have been able to set up my tent and spend the night if I needed to. But she did get me back to the car. And that's just an example of how weather can change and become severe anytime. But the other piece of it is, for example, we had a wildfire in Colorado. It was a Cameron Peak fire. I could see the flames from my house. And in our garage, we had food, water, shelter, and our important papers are not kept in the garage, but we had the important papers, food, water, shelter, and we could load up our vehicle and be gone in 15 minutes with everything we needed to survive on our own without having to wait for FEMA. So all we had to do was get far away enough from the disaster and then pop up a tent. We had food, water, shelter, safety with us. And that's what we keep prepared in our garage. So a lot of people think, well, that outdoorsy stuff, man, I'm not into that. But you know what? It could save your life, because if you have some inexpensive camping gear, you don't necessarily have to buy the best of the best. In fact, you can get it from a garage sale or a secondhand store and just have it in your apartment under a bed. Have it in your storage unit on your balcony or in your garage, and have it all prepared and ready to go. So when we get back from camping, we restock the food, we restock the water, 5-gallon water containers, we restock our life straw so we can just get water out of the river and drink it because it purifies itself. We restock all of that immediately. So if there's a natural disaster, we are self-reliant, self-sufficient. And just like recently with the flood, we had 4 ways to get out to safety. We had a rally point where if my husband and I are separated, we both know where we're going, even if we can't reach each other on the phone, and we just get to our rally point from 4 different directions: north, south, east, and west.
Wow.
That's what true preparedness is. And it doesn't have to break the bank. There's a way to do it step by step, little by little.
What is the most common mistake that you hear when you're trying to talk to people about this?
They always think it won't happen to them. In fact, when I was rescuing people during hurricanes and floods while I was still in the Army, they would always say, we thought this was going to be like every other storm and we didn't evacuate because we never thought it would happen to us. That's what everyone says.
It's always someone else, huh?
Yep.
So you talked about having this camping gear, water. So you just get the basics that you need: water to survive. You need fire, heat. You need something to cover you, a tent. What other kind of things do you recommend?
You have to have your own first aid, because remember, if you don't have first aid and someone is cut and you don't treat that cut, it can become septic. So you could have a bigger, wider infection. You don't want to have to jump in the queue, the long line at the hospital or the long line at the clinics or the first aid tent that FEMA or your county or your state might set up. You don't want to be in that line. That's not a fun place to be. what you want to do is be as self-reliant as you can be. So get yourself some books on basic first aid. Throw that in with your camping gear. Don't rely on your phone because you may not have electricity. You may not have cell phone, might be damaged. So have a book, put the book in a waterproof bag, and have your own first aid supplies. And coming up real soon on New Normal Big Life podcast, I'm interviewing an EMS tech who goes to natural disasters or disasters and does first aid. And he's going to tell you all the things you should have in your first aid kit. In my family's first aid kit, not only do we have the basics for maintaining airway, breathing, and circulation, we also have the basics for treating basic types of infections, for treating respiratory illness, and other kinds of things that you may not expect. Because again, you don't want to be in the hospital with a lot of other sick people. So we use concierge medicine. So we have a doctor that monitors us and helped us create our plan and the kinds of medications we're going to have on hand based on our own unique medical history. And that's in our first aid kit.
Wow, that's definitely that's preparing. I love that because you're right. You had said earlier you could get in that queue and wait forever. You depending on the government, which may not come. Situations like that arrived in when Hurricane Katrina came on, or
That was my thought too.
Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. It had an effect where there was nobody to help, just you. You had to help yourself. So it's awesome that you're helping people with this. It
Thank you.
definitely needed. I always tell my guests, I love people who make humanity better one step at a time. And that's kind of what you're doing in this because we don't know what nature's going to throw at us. We never know. It could be very unpredictable. And so being prepared can be all different.
And not just nature, but you don't know if there's going to be a situation like another pandemic lockdown, civil unrest, a terrorist attack. Our nation is at war. There's so much chaos in the world right now.
Yeah.
Just being prepared and not having to leave your home if there is civil unrest or a terrorist attack or the stores don't have a lot of food. Then if you have at least 4 weeks of food, that gives you time to figure out something else. If you have some seeds for your garden, even if it's a container garden on your apartment balcony or a sunny window in your apartment or your backyard, you don't have to be a homesteader like me. You can just have some seeds and soil. So there's food scarcity. Okay, you can supplement what you can buy at the store with what you can grow for yourself. And I'll give you an example. During World War II, my mother was pregnant with my older brother, and there's a big gap between us. But uh, my dad was, of course, away at war, but my mother had money. There was just no food in the stores to buy. So she would spend most of her day going from store to store trying to get enough food to support her and the baby. And finally, her doctor had to say, you need to go back to your family farm in Virginia, or your baby is not going to make it. There is just not enough food in the city for you to stay healthy. And the baby was failing to thrive. So she did go home to Virginia and delivered a huge baby.
Yeah.
My brother was big when he was born.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
that's just to say, and even also during COVID, I have a friend who lived in New York City, and she said every day before and after work, she would get in line, and there was very little food to buy. And for 18 months, she could not find meat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that would be hell on earth for me because I gotta have some pork chops, man. I gotta have some meat, I gotta have it. But I could talk to you forever. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end. I did wanna, you know, on my show, I always give my guest the last word. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you the mic.
Thank you so much, DB. This has been so
Thank you.
fun. I want everyone to know that preparing for disaster is one of the best ways that you can save yourself and your family, because in your lifetime, it will happen. It probably already happened during COVID when there was a lockdown and you didn't have a lot of food on the shelves. I know in Colorado, where I lived at the time, that was the case. So preparing is not a waste. You can always use that food for another time. Let's say if you're in between jobs and you have some canned foods or frozen food or freeze-dried foods, you can survive on that during tough economic times. But if you don't prepare, you're going to fail at some point, and then you're going to be stuck in a queue with everyone else trying to get services, and that's not a fun or safe place to be. I saw a lot of bad things happen while people were waiting for help during natural disasters. That's where all the predators come out and they prey on people. And you really want to be as far away from that as possible. So if you think it's not within your budget, I would challenge you to make a list of the things that you need to prepare for whatever may happen. And then every time you go shopping, buy 1 or 2 items from that list. Before you know it, that's how I got started. And before you know it, you'll have everything you need. But make it an intentional decision little by little to start preparing.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Can you stick around after the show real quick?